promised, a review of Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. We'll get the basics out of the way. I really liked it. Obviously, no book is for everyone, so your mileage may vary, but we'll talk about it. Start with the basic plot. Klara is a artificial friend, AF, and they're like very sophisticated androids that are bought by parents usually to, be friends to their children. And Klara starts out in this store and finally gets purchased by a girl named Josie who's ill. So some of what Klara's job is to take care of Josie and be there for her when she's sick. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat. And then, and it's that's the basis of it, but really what the story is that Klara is learning the world through her experiences, and her experiences are necessarily very limited, and since the whole story is told from Klara's point of view, you're getting this slice of this much broader world, and it's really well done, and it's very subtle, and that's some of what I love about Ishiguro's writing, is that it's usually very subtle, and you do have to work a little to intuit like the bigger like world. So in this case, Josie has been lifted, which seems to be a choice parents make for their kids early, like maybe as babies even. And then Josie has a friend and neighbor, Rick, who was not lifted, and his life choices are necessarily narrowed by this lack of this lack of advantage, because lifting gives the kids an advantage, but lifting may also be what made Josie really ill, so there's like kind of also a disadvantage to the advantage, or a potential disadvantage. It's kind of a gamble that the parents take. Anyway, the core of the story is, the reason it's called Klara and the Sun, is that Klara is solar powered, and she begins to develop ideas about the sun as this beneficent being that can give his special power to Josie to help her get better. And so what's really interesting to me is that what we're getting is, in this very subtle, way, the sense that this intelligent but innocent mind is creating a religion, basically, a belief system at the very least, in which she decides that there's this particular place that is sacred, and she needs to go there in order to talk directly to the sun and ask him to help Josie, and and things like this. And there's logic to it, even if as you read the book you go, well, that's ridiculous, that's nonsense, and there's no judgment in this book about belief systems in general or anything like that. Again, I think what people who enjoy Ishiguro's writing enjoy is the subtlety and just this kind of presentation. There's a quietness to his writing, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy that style. I enjoy the things he has to say. Never Let Me Go, Remains of the Day. Those are two of my favorite books. And this one, definitely. I think if you like Never Let Me Go, or if you like the movie AI, to me, like, those are the two things that kind of are blended in this book. And so it's, I'm not going to give any spoilers. I'm not going to tell you how it turns out. And there's a lot more going on between Josie and Rick and the whole lifted, not lifted kind of thing. And Rick has his whole story, him and his mom. And like there is more to it, but it is all very soft and quiet. And yeah, there's this like guy who wants to study Klara because he's very interested in how AFs work. And anyway, it's like I said, it's this very interesting slice that you get from Klara's point of view of a much bigger world, and the hints of what has gone on in this world to make it the way it is. And you know, it's all you do have to do the work to kind of intuit and fill in the gaps, because a lot of times Klara is just overhearing people talking, or they're telling her stuff that, you know, they assume she knows something and she doesn't really know it, but you know, she's just like, okay, you know, and that information is obviously then delivered to the readers so that they can make sense of the bigger context. So I gave this book 5 stars because I really enjoyed it, and it's the first book I've really enjoyed at this level in a long time. I mentioned in my blog post about reading and writing reviews, that for me, 5-star books are books that, you know, impact me and stay with me for a long time, and this one I think will stay with me. And that I have different kind of different criteria depending on the kind of book. Like literature, you know, obviously I have a higher standard for than manga. For me, a manga gets 5 stars if I found the storyline really entertaining, or, you know, there was stuff in it I really liked or something. And so I give a lot more 5 stars to manga, say, than I would to the average novel or something like that. This one I gave 5 stars. I mean, it's probably not perfect, but I think I had been in such a dry spell of finding something to read other than manga that I was just so relieved. It was like water in the desert to read this for me. And so that for me is a big part of why I think I received it so well. That, and again, I've always really enjoyed Ishiguro, so I was probably biased going in. I was primed to enjoy it and like the story, and I did as expected. So, you know, again, your mileage may vary. It might not be your kind of thing. Maybe you don't like slower stories. Maybe you don't like story, because, you know, a lot of I always read the reviews after, and a lot of people are like, well, nothing really happens. And I'm like, well, you know, stuff happens, but it's not big stuff. This is not a thriller or anything, but still for me, it was a page turner. I read it relatively rapidly and stayed interested and invested, but like for some people this would be boring probably. You know, people who are more used to fast-paced stuff, or I don't know, more dynamic stories. This is not that. It's dynamic in a different way. But anyway, that is my review. Overall, if you've read it, I'd be curious to see what you thought. If you like or don't like Ishiguro, I'd be curious to hear why or why not. And yes, so I'm going to go back to 88 Names now and finish that. I'm still reading The Once and Future King in the bathtub, but it's going to be a long time, I think, before I'm through all of that, because that is a very long book. I am finding that I'm skimming a lot of The Once and Future King at this point, because there's a lot of like, I don't know if he did a ton of research and just felt like he needed to explain how boar hunting works and how, you know, jousting works and everything, but I was like, I don't need this level of detail, and, you know, and let's just get on with like the actual story. And so so that one is yeah, I don't know, it's okay. I like it more now than I did when I was like 14 and thought it was just awful, but I'm still like, this is not written for, I mean, it was written in what, like the 1950s, I think. So I'm not the target audience, first of all. Second of all, like, the writing styles back then, very different. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'll go back to Le Mot d'Arte and read that and see how I feel between the two. But anyway, I digress. So 88 Names by Matt Ruff up next, and hopefully I'll have a review for you on that soon as well.